Alright, good evening, Mr. Tonkin. This is Chris Streetcheck here to give a quick job analysis verbally. I chose to do one on my current job here as the graduate assistant for the men's golf team here. And I separated out by the 5 different steps that we have listed online within the PowerPoint. The first step with this is to plan the job analysis. I would like to conduct this in order to get more productivity out of the job. I feel there are quite a few wasted hours. Wasted, I want to say, maybe that may not be the right word, but we'll say some hours are much more productive than others. In order to kind of either delete or reuse some of these less productive hours is one of my main goals of this job analysis. And the people who would be involved with this would be definitely myself, because I am the only one who has this position here on campus currently. The head coach obviously would have to be involved in order to say what quality of job I'm doing. Obviously the contract will say that I need to do A, B, and C, but the head coach is really the only one who can say, hey, this guy doesn't have a clue what he's doing, he needs to go, or he's really working his tail off and is doing a great job. The last person I would like to have involved directly is the athletic director. Obviously, Susan, this is her first year as the athletic director, and graduate assistant for the golf team may be pretty low on her list of priorities. But if we are going to do this job analysis, she obviously needs to be involved because she is in charge of the entire athletic program. Sorry, excuse me. So the second part of this job analysis would be to prepare and introduce everything that I'm going to be doing within this specific job analysis. So for the background info, my jobs include coaching and traveling with the team. Obviously, traveling is pretty self-explanatory. You can't really do that in a different way. All that is literally physically being with the team. You can't really do that haphazardly. Either do it or you don't. The second main part of this job is coaching. And this is one where you either really could be a slack and put in kind of a half-ass effort, or you can really go up above and beyond what is expected of you. So in order to find whether you are going up above and beyond what is expected of you, I would like to interview previous assistant coaches and also have the current coaches create a slight daily journal. Obviously, graduate assistants have a decently busy lifestyle between both their job and the hours they put in there, as well as any classes they're taking, such as the one you and I are currently in right now. I would like to interview the previous assistant coaches in order to not only hear their feedback on the job itself, but also to see what kind of hours they put in. This is a job where I feel hours really do mean a lot, even if some are more productive than others. One big issue I do have with my job currently is that there are only 10 required hours to work in the golf shop. Throughout the about 2 months, we'll say, that I've had this job, I easily have 10 hours logged in through to either Tuesday or Wednesday. So whether they need to drop this requirement entirely or up the hours for this requirement, that's something to be figured out throughout this job analysis. But that is something that I feel really could definitely be changed with this job. The point of the daily journal I brought up a few seconds ago would be just to realize which part of the day were those productive hours. What did you do maybe that was the most productive? What did you do that you think might have probably didn't even need to be done, or you could have reallocated those hours into doing um, something better? So moving on to the second part of this would be the sources I would use. I discussed this briefly within the plan, but my sources would include the athletic director. Obviously, she needs to be involved in anything within the athletic program. And I would like to also talk to current and former employees. So these could include either graduate assistant or assistant coaches of other sports. I'd be really interested to see how my hours compared to maybe even a head coach of the men or women's tennis team, or the graduate assistant of the women's bowling team, or so on. To me personally, I feel that would just be interesting to see what my colleagues in other sports are doing. Granted, I've only been here for about 2 months and have not really become super good friends with everyone in the athletic program. Therefore, this job analysis would really help me to understand kind of what they're doing, whether I can help them better themselves, or they can even help myself better me. All of the documentation I would like to use would be the contract and the hour sheets. Part of my job description is to fill out a online time card documenting which hours I worked. There is no difference between whether it's working while I'm traveling or working in the golf shop. St. Francis just wants to know all of the hours I put in, despite me getting paid through a salary, which is a point that I'll bring up later on. The contract is the other part of documentation I would like to use. Whether this needs to be changed, updated, I feel there may be changes needed to make, which is, again, will be brought up later. Who would be conducting this this plan would be an outside agency. I picked the outside agency instead of St. Francis itself in order to avoid bias. Obviously, money's tight these days. They don't want to have to pay someone extra for a job that they've been paying less forever. So when the outside agency would come in, this would avoid a lot of bias. And this outside agency can also give the plan which St. Francis would have to follow. This process would be communicated by email warnings. So maybe warning isn't the best word to use, but before any of the job analysis things come through, emails I would like to be sent out to employees saying, hey, this is what's going on, just a heads up what we're doing here. And then obviously verbally, this is something that I really wish I could have more. It's kind of hard to put in a contract, but I wish I had more verbal face-to-face communication with more people in the athletics department. Because golf is kind of separated, we have our own facility with the golf course. We don't actually have an office within athletics. Our office is at the golf course. So we are separated a little bit. For example, there's a new athletic director this year, Susan. I've only shook hands with her twice in the 2 months that I've been here. Obviously, I would say hello to her if I saw her walking down the street or something, but I would really like to make a more personal connection with her, just to be better friends and just get to know her better. So moving on to the third stage of this would be conducting this job analysis. In my opinion, this is kind of the beefiest part where really all the magic happens, so to say. Data will be collected in order to compare hours to previous assistant coaches and of other sports and to the contract. So we're comparing the hours put in to 3 different places. This would be very interesting to see who may be slacking, who may be putting in extra work, and maybe even whether the contract needs to be updated if everyone is either putting way more hours than they need to, or they're not even getting close to the amount of hours that their contract says. So these findings will then find whether the coach should receive more in their salary or hourly pay. So I bring this point up because I know the previous two graduate assistants have been paid hourly. This year, I found out that I will be paid via salary, but they still want to know all of the hours that I put in throughout the week. Job inflation is not an issue in this circumstance because everybody coming in I would assume, would have a 4-year bachelor's degree already, and people come to this job in order to earn a graduate degree, which is part of the reason why I'm in this class. Responsibility inflation, I feel, may be found just because people may put in more than what their contract says they need to do. And if this is the case, either the contract needs to be updated, and throughout the business office and human resources department, compensation may go up as well. But again, that's for these departments as well as the outside agency to figure out on themselves. I feel this job analysis would be a good thing to do before violations are found with the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. This would be just more to avoid legal trouble, because if a government official who may be working in this department finds this, maybe St. Francis could get hit with a fine, maybe the worst case scenario, a suspension for an athletics team, or the loss of the job of maybe the athletic director, someone in the business office, and in a very, very severe case, the human resources department. So moving on to the fourth part of the job analysis would be the job descriptions. In this part, I would like to review each contract for the graduate assistants and then revise, if necessary, with the athletic director as well as the business department. So in this phase, we're going to truly find out, we're going to compare the data that we found earlier to the actual contract used. This will really be the truth to see whether the contract truly does reflect the work that each of us graduate assistants and assistant coaches are doing. So if pay and work changes happen, obviously the business and HR department will need to be informed as well. And the last part of the job analysis, the fifth step, is to update all of the job descriptions. This is the part where any necessary changes would need to be made. This would obviously need to be communicated both to the upper level management, which in this case is the business and human resources department, as well as the workers. So throughout this job analysis, if they find something screwy with the contract, obviously myself and any other graduate assistant for the athletics program would need to be notified that there's going to be a change in contract. So that is my verbal job analysis. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will hopefully see you soon. Have a good night. Bye-bye.